right? Deuteronomy 26, let's call this one bottom to the top, because that is exactly the pattern this chapter seems to take in describing two things that the nation of Israel is going to need to do once they get to the promised land, and that is to offer their first fruits and their tithes before the Lord. First of all, the first fruits. It's going to come with a statement, and that statement is going to acknowledge the difficult times they had in Egypt in a lot of ways, a period of shame as they were being brought out of slavery. But as they move into offering the tithe, it's also going to come with a statement. They're going to have to, in the affirmative, acknowledge that they brought it all, and then two, in the negative, acknowledge that they have not skimmed from it. Meaning there are times in life when we can be called to do a thing, but we can do it half-heartedly. Meaning we can bring everything we've been asked to bring, but we can kind of redirect it to a different purpose. He is telling them you have to acknowledge that you've done everything and you've done it the right way, sending it all to the right folks. Why? Because he's saying if they do these things, they fully honor the first fruits and they fully bring the tithe in to give it to, once again, the vulnerable in their society, the widows, the fatherless, the sojourners, and the Levites. And then what he's going to do is exalt them above the nations. And the reason why these two offerings are important, or at least seem to be important, is because if he's exalting them above the nations, it's almost like the U.S. sending out an ambassador. I got to see a film not too long ago about this string of ambassadors a few years back who had an uphill fight representing the United States on a national stage. What they were doing is basically being a personal representative of what the United States is at its best. And this is what God is doing in many ways when he's saying he's setting Israel up above the nations. Once again, he is not partial, but he is giving the world a picture of what it's like, once again, to come out of a position of shame into a position of honor. And then two, to do that in a way that's compassionate to those who in many ways are filling out a role in your current society that you once filled in someone else's as a stranger and a sojourner in Egypt. And so understand the application for us. When God is putting us on display, we are ambassadors, as it's described, for Christ. And to the degree we're going to properly fill out that role, we have to be candid enough to acknowledge that there's some things, if God put on blast, we'd be really ashamed to have known. And if he is going to exalt us or forgive us for those shameful periods in our life, he is putting us on display so that we can likewise help people who may still be struggling with levels of shame that cause them to have trouble even lifting up their heads. And so if we're properly going to represent Christ, we're doing it as people who have been forgiven and have overcome periods of shame in our own lives so that we can properly represent God to people who are still potentially engaged in that struggle, which is one of the reasons why we say his best to you as you go forward in him. This time, recalling the ways in which you've overcome your own shame so that you can help others overcome theirs in him.